Hello everybody, it's me, Kat. How are you today? Today we are going to talk about another incredible book by Saffron Kent called Dreams of 18. I finished this book last night. I read it all day yesterday. Yes, I liked it. She writes taboo, and I said it in my previous video that I did on her previous book called Medicine Man that I read a couple months ago. She does taboo so well, and the taboo part of this book is that it's an age gap story, and I just eat her words up. I think she makes me a better reader. Because I normally, I read all different kinds of romance books, but, there's some of the taboo that I just don't, I'm just not interested in. But you know what? If Saffron's writing it, I'm reading it. And I can do a patient-doctor taboo. I can do a age gap taboo. I can do all that kind of, typical life taboo. I just love her books. It's just that simple. This book is about Violet and Mr. Edwards. His name is Graham. Violet is on the eve of her 16th birthday when the book starts. Graham is her next door neighbor. His son is her age. They become very good friends. Graham is in his middle 30s. He had Brian, his son, when he was younger, and Brian's mom is not in the picture. It's always been the two of them. Really loved his parental view and how he took to fatherhood, and we hear about that a little bit later in the book. As always with Saffron's heroines, they are quirky and old souls and sometimes immature, but yet so endearing, and you just adore them. They're always brutally honest. They've always got something different about them, and I just enjoy that so much. And it shines through with her writing a lot, how a lot of the characters see themselves as maybe not worthy in their lives, or have been knocked down, or deal with some mental illness challenges, or not good family lives, or whatever it is. And I feel like she writes that all very well and very appropriately, and it makes you want to just give them all a hug, and you hate that life has treated them poorly, and you're glad that they find this, because it's a romance book, they find this other person, that stands in their corner and roots for them. So this book was no different, and I really love that about her stories. You will definitely want to check out the playlist that comes with, there's two playlists actually that you can access through the book. It's listed. It's Violet's Kick-Ass playlist, and it's amazing. And one of the first things that I highlighted in the book was actually when Violet is talking about having her headphones on, and she listens to really different music, and Brandy by the Looking Glass, she talks about that, and I can remember that being on the radio and being in the car with my dad and hearing that, and him driving and tapping on the steering wheel to it. And that song is still played in my husband's car. My husband has a very eclectic taste in music, and you can find almost any genre of music in his car on his playlist at any time. And that song comes on all the time. So immediately I connected with Violet's taste in music. And so definitely check out the playlist when you go through and read the book, because it's awesome. We met Violet in Medicine Man, which is a previous book by Saffron, and this book doesn't run in tandem, but it definitely intersects with Medicine Man in a couple different places, and I really loved being able to go back and see that part, and because Medicine Man was still fresh in my head, having just read it a couple months ago, and to see more about Violet's story And because she's, I liked her when I met her in Medicine Man, and it's not a series, but it picks up and it's her story. And we got some insight into what we knew of her from Medicine Man in Dreams of 18. And I loved getting to see that perspective, and the intersection where the two books kind of came together, and then this one kind of takes off on its own. It was really cool. Poor Violet, her home life is horrible. She has a sister who she doesn't really get along with. Her father is always traveling. Her mother, she talks about how her mother is always having affairs and is always drinking, and there's not much of a family life, and how she feels and was told that she was unwanted. And that really sets up how Violet takes on the world. She's by herself all the time. She doesn't get along with her sister. She doesn't have many friends. And, her outlet is her journal and her music. And, she's different. She feels like an outcast in every aspect of her life. And your heart really pulls for her. And one time when she's truly happy is at night, when she can go out on her roof of her house and be under the stars and under the moon and be by herself, and no one's bothering her and no one's looking at her, and she's just herself and accepted in herself. And it really, to me, became that, how she described that in the book when she was doing that, and how it gets talked about later in the story, and how Mr. Edwards observes that with her, and how he saw her doing that, and his take on seeing her up on the roof by herself was really profound to me. And how somebody could be going about their life, she's this 15, almost 16-year-old girl, and he doesn't know anything about her. He lives next door to her, but he doesn't know anything about her. But her going out on her roof and doing that made him take a second glance at her, and what that ended up meaning to him in his life, and how it affected him in his life, which we learn about later, was so cool to me and so interesting, because you don't even realize she had no idea that he had noticed that and was watching her. And it goes to show that you just never know who's watching, who's in your corner, who's observing you, and that you're not as invisible as Violet thought she was. It's pretty apparent right from the get-go that the first time she sees Mr. Edwards, Graham, that she's dumbstruck by him. His overall appearance. She mistakes him for one of the moving guys that's moving actually the furniture, and then she realizes, oh no, he actually lives there. Outwardly, she is like, oh my gosh, who is that specimen? But she's 16. I mean, she doesn't have the maturity. She's just like, oh my gosh, she just, it was her first crush, really, when it comes down to it, and how profoundly affected by him she was. And lo and behold, she becomes very good friends with Brian, his son, and she considers him his best friend, but she can't even allow herself to be in the house when Mr. Edwards is home, because she's that affected by him. She blushes, her heart races. She literally has a massive crush on him. And it was very sweet, but yet very sad, because she didn't know what to do with it. She couldn't do anything about it. He's Brian's dad. He's older. And that's where I think the balance of how Saffron writes really shines through, because from her perspective, yes, the age gap is big. Her kind of like puppy love crush that she has on him is really big. But then you get to know her more, and you learn about her as a character, and you hear her thoughts and what she's saying and how her life is. And you realize she's so endearing, and she's such an old soul that it wouldn't matter who it was. It just happened to be him. And he was the person that she was supposed to be with. And he just happened to be like twice her age, you know? But like, such is life, right? But society doesn't let that happen. And it becomes a catastrophic situation, of course. This is what we can assume about their story, that, you know, there's some interaction between them finally, and it's catastrophic. And it turns out that one of the closest people to her made it more than it had to be. And I was so mad at that. I was so frustrated with that. And I was so mad at her family. And basically Brian and Graham get kind of run out of town, and their town kind of turns on Violet, and it's really sad. Those were really hard chapters. As this situation is happening that was catastrophic and changed everything for them, there's interaction between Mr. Edwards and Violet, and she's so like can't even almost like talk around him, and yet because she's so like her heart's beating so fast and she's so physically overcome by him. And she talks about how being this close to him in real life he's so much more imposing, and he's this big brawny handsome gruff man. And you know, she talks about his hiking boots and his thick thighs. She's obsessed with his thighs, and he's this big man and she's this little small, and she said, I feel so little next to him. And when you look a little bit farther into that, and we see how as their relationship kind of develops, how his size is something that she's drawn to, because she sees the strength and she sees the protectiveness, and she sees this big person, this man. And she's drawn to that because nobody's ever taken care of her. Nobody's ever looked at her. Nobody's ever made her feel wanted. Nobody's ever been her friend. Nobody has ever been like, we're gonna do this together. Not her sister, not her mom, not her dad. She has no friends except for her girlfriends that she met when she did some inpatient time. And that's Medicine Man, that's that book, and that's how it intersects. The physicality of their relationship is very meaningful to her, in that he's this big guy and she feels this ease and this safety when she's around him. And it really it has a huge effect on her, not just, you know, the sexual tension, but their size difference is a big deal to her. So that night that everything kind of changes, she says something that just, you know, hit me right in the heart. And something that she loves about Mr. Edwards is that he has this beautiful rose garden. And she wonders why he has this beautiful rose garden. He's this, like, you know, like I said, brawny big man, and he's out there painstakingly taking care of these beautiful roses. And she goes over to look at the rose garden, and they end up having a conversation, and she says something. She takes some of the dead roses, and first of all, I mean, she didn't take the pretty live ones, the ones that were still vibrant and full of color. She took the dead ones that he was going to prune off, she figured. And what she says about it was really profound, and I'd like to read it to you. So he asks her, why do you want those? Why don't you want the good ones? And she's like, I want the bad ones. And he's like, why? And she says, because everyone wants something pretty, I blurt out, even though I have a feeling the answer won't matter to him. Nothing about me matters to anyone, so why would something change now? Even so, I keep going. Something that's fresh and beautiful, something that's perfect. But then what about the things that are imperfect? Things that might not be as pretty or conventional. Things that might be weird, outdated, or outcast. They're not in much demand, are they? They're not wanted, but I do. I want them, so they don't feel rejected. I mean, who's she talking about? She's talking about herself. It was, oh, my heart. The book picks up again. The book picks up 2 years later, and Violet feels like she needs to go make it right. She feels like the situation was blown out of proportion. No one listened to her. No one was willing to listen to her and her side of what happened. And if they would have just listened, they would have realized it wasn't what it was made out to be. And she wants to go make it right. So she decides to go find Mr. Edwards. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. And let me tell you, surprise after surprise with the book. Right when I thought that was going to be the end, the story kept going and we learned another layer and we got to know Graham on a different level. And I loved that. At that point in the book, we get chapters from Graham, Mr. Edwards, Graham at that point. And slowly he has Violet kind of just charged right in there and was like, listen, I need to make it right. And you can hate me all you want, but I'm going to be here to help you because his life has fallen apart. His son is gone. He's living by himself. The house he's living in is decrepit. There's no rose garden. She's like, oh my gosh, like I need to help him. And she does. And it was really cute to see her. She's so quirky and I love that. And to see her find her way in all of that and to see his walls start to come down a little bit with her. And then we learn all of this whole other part to their story. And that was, I touched on it a little bit before about how he saw her up on the roof and what that did to him. And we learn more about his side of their love story. Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. As with any Saffron Kent book, it's a little steamy. Are you kidding me? It's a lot steamy. It is very steamy, very sexy. She is of age when we get to the sexy parts. Let me just tell you, of course, right? Wow. And it was funny because I don't really know how to say this, but you don't know what people are like behind closed doors or inside a book, inside a relationship until you read it. And I felt like Violet's immaturity kind of showed through in some of their moments, and he kind of ate that up. And she just, she's obviously a virgin, and he just turns her on. I mean, just looking at him, and she's like a puddle. And she talks about that a lot and how she's so physically and how they just kind of can't get enough of each other. And she realizes that she has been in love with him since the first moment she saw him. And, their sexy time is, wow. Like I touched on a minute ago, that we get more. The book is divided into 3 parts, and we get so much more from Graham's side later in the book, and I loved that. But something, I touched on the fact that just when I thought their story was going to kind of be done, it wasn't. And one of those parts was, and it was kind of the last thing, not in their way. I think Violet feels like it's in their way a little bit. And something that Saffron generally writes about with her female characters is that they always have a challenge. They might have dealt with depression. They might have dealt with, in this case, panic disorder. There's something, mentally about them that they have challenges. And I think she writes that very appropriately and very well. And Violet, has wants to be able to tell him that she has trouble and, you know, what her life is for her, you know, and that when she's just with him, she's different because she knows he accepts her at that point. But outside of that, life is scary for her, and she runs into stumbling blocks being out in the public all the time. And that's that last hurdle that she feels like she needs to get out in the open with him so that she can give herself fully to him. And she does. And the way she is able to tell him, she's not able to tell him. She gives him her journals that she's kept for years and years and years going back. And she felt like if he read that, then it would be easier than trying to explain it to him. And then he would learn about when she fell in love with him and when she saw him, and in a different way than her just telling him. And I thought that was so sweet. But that whole part, I had tears in my eyes about it. It killed me. It absolutely killed me. And you don't want to happen what happens. And, you know, I just wanted it to all be okay. And I wasn't sure that it was going to be. Some major themes running through the book for me was acceptance, being visible and being seen by somebody else, and tied to that, this being seen by the person that you want the most to see you, and being brave in love and trust. And that came to me when the book was almost finished. And when I thought about that, I looked back. Oh, I'm getting a sun thingy in here. And when I looked back, those are what came to me. And I thought it was really beautiful how that was all laid out for us, and that I came to that conclusion towards the end of the book, that those were the things that really stuck out to me, that on their journey, both separately and together, that's what they both needed to be complete and to bring themselves, you know, full circle in their relationship and to be able to move forward. Yeah, it was really pretty deep. But her books are deep. That's why I say she writes not only taboo, but she writes so well. There's so much to them. Something else that really tugged at my heartstrings in this book was that nobody ever remembers Violet's birthday. Can you imagine? Your own mother doesn't remember your birthday. Your family, you know, your birth family, your family of origin doesn't remember your birthday? I mean, whoa. That really affected me. That really made me very sad. I had to laugh because at one point, Violet is talking to Graham and she says, "Okay, honey," or she says something, but she uses honey as an endearment. And I talked about in the very beginning about how Brandy by the Looking Glass, you know, that it reminded me of growing up, and that it, you know, to this day, it's on my husband's playlist in his car. And then to hear Violet call Graham honey. Now I understand everybody calls everybody honey, but I always look for little pieces of the book that affect me personally. And if I showed you my phone right now, you would see that my husband is listed in my phone under the contacts as my honey. So that was a personal connection to the book that I loved. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Let me know if you've read any of Saffron's books. Let me know if you read Medicine Man, or if you've read this one, Dreams of 18. We get a glimpse into what I think will be her next book at the end of Dreams of 18. So that was super exciting to see that. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for stopping by. I will see you soon.